Hey everyone, I hope you're doing great and you're following the 3 H's of the channel. In this video, it's all about North and South Dakota. I chose these two states because combined they have a massive area and there's only a couple million people in between it, and I was thinking that some weird stuff has to be happening there. Turns out, I was right. So, pull up a stump with me and let's jump into it. Thank you for watching. So this one time, me and my team lead were out for a 3-day tour in the ICBM missile fields of North Dakota. We're posted at a missile alert facility called Juliet. It's right outside the haunted North Dakota town of Taugust. Me and my partner Maze are the night shift security response team, SRT, so we head out to our rooms to get some Z's. I wake up a few hours later to a skittering across the floor and then rapid footsteps down the hall outside my room. I get up quicker than a jackrabbit and open the door to the hall. Maze is already there. He's peeking his head out through the doorway of his own room. He asks if I heard something, and I most certainly did. I tell Maze it must have been the day SRT just screwing around with us, and we should go back to sleep. A couple hours later, we wake up, get ready, and give the day SRT some shit, as we're quite sure it was them, as we sit down to eat chow. But they have no idea what we're talking about. I ask the chef. It's a big pale guy named Finley. He won't even talk to us. He just keeps crying and sobbing. I think he's a weirdo. I ask the facility manager. He says that he has no idea what we're talking about. He was nowhere near there. Me and Maze are profoundly creeped out. The night shift is nuts. We only got back to the rooms and the day SRT wakes up all mad. They keep telling us, "Stop screwing with us. We heard you guys outside our rooms pretending to cry." But we swear up and down that we didn't do anything. The security controller confirms our story. We can't find Finley, but there's another chef there. He must have had a family emergency or something and switched out during the night. It would explain why he was crying. The new chef thinks that we're all dumb cops and tells us to go away. We question the facility manager again. He thinks we're all idiots. Maze asks him if he thinks Finley may have been behind everything and was screwing with us before he left during the night. He gives us a weird look. He says, "Who in the hell is Finley?" It turns out, after asking around, Finley is a chef that ended his own life at that MAF. This was 8 years before that we ever got there. He apparently did so because he found out that his wife was cheating on him and he couldn't go on, and his name was Finley. I have this story that happened a long time ago. It's about the time that I got stuck in a ditch and how I had to find my way back through the snowy North Dakotan plains. I ran into some really spooky shit when I spent the night in an abandoned barn. So once again, this happened to me, and it was mid-December, North Dakota. It's one of the worst places to be for weather. Cold northern winds can take it down to -40 in a heartbeat. Unfortunately, this day was one of those days. It was blizzarding out. Snow was everywhere. I could barely see. And I was driving home from Grand Forks. I had just gotten Christmas presents from my family, and Christmas was in about a week. I was driving down the highway, and suddenly I see 2 bright as hell headlights through the flurries. I'm thinking that I must be on the wrong side of the road, so I freak out and I swerve to avoid a head-on collision. But in doing so, I realize that I just ran into the ditch. My car was stuck in a snowdrift. My car is at a 45-degree angle. I can't see out the windshield or the front side windows. That's how deep the snow is. And soon after, my car dies. I reach for my phone. I'm gonna need help. I never take my phone out of my coat pocket, so it should be there. But it's not. My coat is at home. I had to wear a different one that day because my old one had a tear on the inside that I was meaning to fix. I swore to myself profusely. I look outside the back window to see where I am. I'm near a small town, only about a mile away, and this small town is about another 7 miles away from where I live. I have no phone. The only thing I can really do is walk, and there's no way I'm going to survive in this weather with all this snow. I figured I had better get moving or I'm going to freeze to death in my car. But I'm not just going to leave the Christmas gifts behind. I load them all up in my arms and on my back, and I open the door. About 500 meters to my right is an abandoned stead, and I think this is a lucky break. I wade my way through the 2 to 3 foot snow, and I go towards this old farmstead. I make it to the barn, walking inside the busted down door and stepping inside. It's cold as hell, but it's a lot warmer than the snow. I decide that I'll use this as a checkpoint, and I'll look for my next stop on the way to the small town. But after I look outside, there's nothing but white snow for another mile. I'm all alone, and I feel like I'm absolutely screwed. There's no way I'm going to survive. It's -40, and the snow might collapse the barn on my head. I think, well, the blizzard's expected to go until tomorrow morning. I might have a chance if I leave then, but until then, I better watch my ass. At this point, I can't feel my fingers. My ears are icicles. I really should have had more gloves, and my hat, but I think, well, hindsight's 20/20, or maybe not with all of the snow that I'm seeing. After swearing to myself again, I see a window of opportunity. I tear my daughter's Dora the Explorer blanket out of the bag and I wrap myself in it. I sit there for a while, contemplating the shit show that I'm in. And then I'm thinking what awful luck I'm having. It's cold as tits, but the blanket is keeping me alive. About 5 hours later, my stomach growls. I'm hungry as all hell. I consider eating the dinner that I had bought, but most of it is raw meat. Save for the vegetables that are probably as stiff as my fingers are right now, but I digress. An hour later, I start eating some of the shrimp that I had in there. After that, I curl up some more. I grab the Dora the Explorer pillow that I had bought, and I try to get some sleep. And then there's an awful screeching. I jump up. The barn door. It's open. I think, what the hell? The wind isn't that strong. There's no way it could have shoved all the snow out of the way like that. But I think, whatever, I have to be stressed out and imagining things. And then I hear something. It sounds like a clop, clop, clop. I'm hearing footsteps above me. It's footsteps. It can't be anything else. I get up and do everything I can to keep my hands warm, and then I look around. But there's nothing. I see a ladder, and I climb it to get to the next level of the barn, and there's still nothing. I think I have to be going insane. I'm on my way back down the ladder when suddenly I see something at the corner of my eye move from the corner. I turn and face it. It's nothing. Wow, again, nothing. My heart's racing. I go back down. I curl up in my blanket again and lay down, trying to convince myself that I'm alone. An hour or so later, I'm spent, starving, and tired as hell, but I finally pass out. I wake up sometime later. I don't know what time it is. I know it's morning though. The sun is shining outside. I sit up and I feel my ear. Well, I actually can't. It had turned blue from frostbite. I'm cursing to myself again. I look down at my bags and presents. Well, what was left of them anyhow? Everything that I had been gone through and ravaged. The Legos I had were spilled everywhere. The Barbie dolls I had bought were all beheaded. Only beheaded. There were no bite marks, no scratches. Only their heads were torn off. The other things that I had bought were scattered around the ground in the barn. After I try to recover from a panic attack, I pick everything up, bag it up again, and look outside. It's not snowing. The sun is shining bright. The sky is clear. And I'm thinking, what the hell, Mother Nature? After shrugging, I look at the town a mile away and start walking. I want nothing to do with this barn anymore. I get home to my worried sick family after hitching a ride. It was great to see them again after I thought that I was going to die. I never figured out what happened that night, but I'm glad I decided to behead my dolls instead of me. And not only that, but what's weirder still, if it was a person, you'd think that they would have taken the food that I had, but what was left of my dinner was untouched. Obviously, whatever did this either didn't like it or wasn't hungry. I used to live in South Dakota, literally the middle of nowhere. It was like 8 miles to the nearest town. Milk was almost $5 a gallon, and I remember getting suspended from school for saying, "Oh my God," during recess. You know, that kind of town. This was in 1999, mind you. I was in 5th or 6th grade when I lived there, and I spent a year or so in total isolation outside of anyone but my family. We had shitty dial-up internet, so I spent my recreation time exploring the outlying swamps and fields. Most of our land was a swamp, so I spent my summer picking leeches off my skin and seeing what was over the next hill, and just looking around all the old buildings. I was really into Pokemon and Star Fox 64 at the time, so I'd run around the property pretending to be Fox McCloud or Ash. You have to realize that I had literally miles of forgotten land to explore, full of broken down farming equipment, ponds, and other things. One of these ponds was even deep enough to be a lake likely, but not near wide enough, if that makes sense. But I digress. This story is about what looked to be a chicken coop, reinforced like a house in the worst part of a city. One of the first things that my parents noted about this farm was the smell. We blamed it on the swamp because it did stink, but this was different. The swamp had an earthy, sour smell. This was metallic or coppery, almost like that taste after a nosebleed. After getting settled in, we started snooping. My dad took over the garage as his own and found a dead cat. My brother and I found a dead skunk and some kind of farming equipment, but this was within the first week and a half. And just after that, we checked more into this locked up building that now that I look back had no reason to exist. It was just randomly there, like this outdoor storage area. And like I said, it was locked up like a house in the worst part of town. There was this chicken wire in the glass, and there was metal bars in front of that. There was windows in between. The wooden door had a padlock on it, and oddly, that was it. My dad has messed with it before, of course, but made no real effort to get in there. It was after a few days when we narrowed down where that coppery smell was coming from that we made the effort to break in. At first I assumed that maybe it was some kind of small makeshift slaughter room, but after prying the lock off the door, all we found was a pit. The smell was overwhelming, decay and blood. It made me sick, and we hadn't even walked into the room yet. I had no idea what this farm was used for before we moved in. I know there was a fairly large chicken coop, this odd room, a garage, and the house. Was it supposed to be an outhouse? Some place to dump something gross? Something was wrong there, but that's when the weird stuff really started to happen. We closed the door, but didn't lock it. Soon after, my sister woke us all up freaking out one night. She had to have been about 9 at the time. We had one of those houses where you could open your window and sit outside on the roof. I'm not sure how to describe it. This freaked me and my brother out when she was saying that something woke her up trying to open her window. The disturbing part is, you could see the grease on the window. You could see where somebody had touched it from the outside. My parents freaked out, and things only got worse from there. We had 2 dogs. They went apeshit one night, so my dad called them in, but only one came in. My brother's dog just vanished, and we never saw it again. My brother found the screen to his window scratched up one morning. I would go out exploring, and I would swear to you guys that in those fields of cattails, they didn't move quite right at times. There was something out there. I could go on all night, but I feel like I'm getting long-winded already. Anyways, after a few more months of torment, we moved back to Montana. It was after my sister mostly, and one time after my dad was really screwed with one night. Nobody was ever hurt, but I think it was building up to hurting one of us. Anyways, here's why I even say this. That hole that smelled like a slaughterhouse, what was it, and what or who came out of it? A long time ago in the past, when I had told the story to somebody else, somebody mentioned something about the goat man, and I admit, even now I don't really know much about it, but if something wanted to get in, it could have pretty easily done so. This was during the summer, so we would all sleep with the windows open. My dad had set up shop in the garage, and some nights our dogs would just not shut up. They would just bark and growl at nothing, in no general direction, and then suddenly just stop, or start trying to get off their chains and get in the garage with my dad. He would hear something crawling on the roof and fogging up the glass or tapping on it, slamming the sides. One night, he was done and getting ready to head back to the house, but he couldn't get the door open. There was something against it from the outside. It was weird seeing my dad come back in looking scared. I've seen him furious, sad, euphoric drunk, but never scared. After that, he started carrying his gun with him whenever he went out at night. Never during the day. He was worried he'd get jumpy and shoot me or someone else playing in a swamp or something. Eventually, we called the police after my mom was attacked. At this point, it was mostly something weird is going on. But I'm a rational person, and I don't believe monsters are real. It could have been the neighbor kids, but walking miles and miles just to prank some new people in town would be a little weird. But then again, life was pretty dull there before after all this started happening. So my brother and I got home from school one day, and we saw our dad was home. This was odd because he was supposed to be at work. Our mom was visibly shaken, and my dad was stressed out because someone had tried to break into the house. It started as just thumping, knocking on the windows, throwing rocks at the front door. When she went outside, she said she was calling the police, and whatever it was got violent. He was trying to bash his way in, she said, but the door wasn't even locked. None of our doors were ever locked during the day. So the police or the sheriff or whatever had showed up and waited for my dad, and she showed them the hole, and they looked around the property. He didn't do shit. My dad said that he didn't even seem like he really cared to be there. That very night, I was in bed reading like I always do before passing out. It was dead silent. Everyone's in bed, I think, and something slammed into my window. How it didn't shatter my window right then and there, I have no idea, but it jarred me to the point that I just ran blindly out of my room and into my parents'. My dad went outside and made a big show, fired his gun off so they knew he meant business, and then there was just silence. And then real gunshots, real as in he saw something and was now trying to kill it. This was when things started to really disturb me and set in. See, my bedroom window was up on the second floor, and it's like a 30-foot drop. There was a tree, but the branches were way too thin to support anything but maybe a bird or a light cat. Believe me, I tried to crawl up my window into the tree within the first week of moving there, because that would have been cool as hell to be able to do that. Anyways, so there was no way anything could have climbed up there. Could it have been a bird or a bat that hit my window? Maybe, but birds are usually nested this time of night, and bats are pretty small. I don't think they could do that. A week before this, I probably would have just jumped and maybe almost have a heart attack but shrug it off, but we're all on edge. So my dad gets back in and said that he chased something into the swamp, and then it started making animal noises, like just at the edge of the cattails, and those things get tall and thick. So my dad do what any American would do in that situation, and they shot blindly into the brush. He said that he could hear the noises move around, but never heard the rustling of the bushes. Was there more than one? Can it move that quietly? No idea. The animal noises were mostly kind of like pig grunts, as he described it, but more of a croak, if that makes sense. Well, none of this makes any sense. When I tell other people about all this stuff, I get all kinds of looks, or they just go, and I can tell that they think I'm full of shit, so I just kind of keep it to myself. Wouldn't you, after seeing the same look every time? Anyways, that night the copper smell just would not go away. Normally, we just kept away from that area, and unless the wind picked up, we didn't notice it too much. But that night, it was just in there with us. After that, things went down a notch. The banging stopped. Our dog seemed to relax again. But the smell was always getting worse, and its presence was more subtle. It was around fall, and my parents had decided to stay. My dad argued that him shooting at who or whatever it was scared it off, but it was stuff that my brother and I started to notice around the property, because as I said before, we would explore it all the time, and with things settling down around the house, we started going out again. First, it was the water. It used to be pretty clear in some areas, but now it was all reddish, brown, and shitty looking. Then was the lack of wildlife. Sure, it was a turning fall, but there were no frogs or little fish or even ducks. It could have been the changing season, but it was just so sudden. And then it was the weird carvings that we'd find on some of the trees. Simple stuff, like a circle with a square in the middle and a slash through it. I don't recall the other symbols too well, but like I said, after some time we eventually moved back to Montana, and everything that happened there just became like a weird part of your memory. But it's still insane to look back and think about all we went through. What the hell was in that pit? What was in the cattails? There's no answers to these questions. So, what did you think of those encounters? They were pretty crazy, weren't they? If there was one in specific that stuck out to you, let me know which one it was down in the comments. Do you have one of your own? I have an email in the description below that you can send them to if you'd like to. Also down there is a PayPal and a Patreon if you would like to support the channel that way, and super thanks here on YouTube. And with that, I'll see you in the next one. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, then please like and subscribe, and maybe share the video with your friends or somebody else or someone you think might like this kind of stuff. And I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for pulling up a stump, and thank you for watching. I'll put up another couple of videos here at the end in case you want to check out another one, and have a good week.